Hello, everyone. A very good morning or good afternoon to you, depending on where you are. Hope you're staying safe during this time. I'm Phoebe Nonis, Trade Manager at the British Malaysian Chamber of Commerce, or BMCC as we are known. I would like to welcome you to our webinar today. The topic is Malaysia Tech Rising Star in Southeast Asia. We would like to inform you that we will be recording the webinar and sharing the recording on social media as well. We are pleased to have with us a great lineup of speakers. Welcome to everyone. From the Department of International Trade, or DIT Northwest, we welcome Ms. Philomena Chen, Head of Asia Pacific or Smart Cities Lead. Welcome, Philomena. Thank you for coming. Philomena will be providing the welcome remarks and also sharing information on the upcoming Northern Powerhouse virtual trade mission to Malaysia this July. Following Philomena's remarks, I will then be sharing an overview of Malaysia and how BMCC can support you in the market. From DIT Malaysia, we are pleased to welcome the Senior Trade Manager for Technology, Mr. Calvin Wu. Welcome, Calvin. Thank you for joining. Calvin will be sharing information on the UK-Malaysia partnership for the tech sector. We also welcome the agency which drives the digital agenda for Malaysia. They are Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, or MDEC as they are known. Representing MDEC is Mr. Ryan Chan, Head of Global Business Development, Tech Ecosystem and Globalization. Hello, Ryan. Thank you for coming. Ryan will be sharing on tech-focused sectors for Malaysia, opportunities for tech companies, and initiatives to support market entry. From the Marks & Clark Group, the largest specialist international firm of patent and trademark attorneys in the world, we have the Director of the local office, Dr. Chris Hemingway. Welcome, Chris. Thank you for coming. Chris will be sharing information on protecting your intellectual property. And last but not least, we're pleased to welcome two speakers from Deloitte, an organization which needs no further introduction, Ms. Sim Kwang Gek, Managing Director of Deloitte Tax Services, and Mr. Eugene Chow, Director of Tax for Deloitte Malaysia. Welcome, Kwang. And I know Eugene's joining us a little bit later. They will be briefing on setting up in Malaysia and sharing information on taxes. Once again, a huge thank you to all our speakers for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. Before we start the session, a little bit of housekeeping. Please be forthcoming with your questions during this session. We will be taking questions after each presentation, and there will also be a final Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Please feel free to send your questions in through the Q&A function available at the bottom of your screen instead of in the public chat function. We will attempt to answer your questions if time permits. If not, we will either type in our answers through the Q&A box or we will follow up with you after the webinar. Please also indicate which speaker your question is for. So without further ado, I would like to invite Philomena to provide the welcome remarks. For those who have just joined us, Ms. Philomena Chen is the Head of Asia Pacific Smart Cities Lead from DIT Northwest. Philomena, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Phoebe. Good afternoon, Malaysia. And to everyone listening in the UK, a very good morning. I would like to do a quick mention of colleagues from DIT in the UK Northern Powerhouse region who are here. Beth Mullen, our Deputy Head for the Northwest region, Irina Shmokova, our Mission Coordinator, Paul Smark, the International Trade Advisor for the Northeast, Annie Bradley, ITA for Yorkshire and Humber, Jenny Mooney, also from ITA Northwest, and also colleagues in Malaysia whom I've been working very closely with to make things happen. A big thank you to Clifford Batt, the Deputy Country Director for DIT Malaysia, Calvin Wu, of course, and Phoebe. And in addition, I'm delighted to welcome the newly appointed Northern Powerhouse Senior Trade Manager for Indonesia, who's based in Jakarta, Dewi Sari. She's responsible for promoting and showcasing the very best of what Northern companies have to offer and to find opportunities in Indonesia for Northern Powerhouse businesses. As we moved out of COVID restriction in England, Malaysia, and the neighboring Southeast Asia economies can hopefully get back open and running. We at Department for International Trade continues to support UK exporters and foreign investors through our global office network. We want to see more UK Northern companies to grow their international business. It is an opportunity to develop new business relations and explore the exciting opportunities which Malaysia has to offer. Malaysia is also a member of the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, a trade agreement between 11 Pacific nations. The UK has asked to begin negotiations to join it to make trading with the region even easier for businesses. For the benefits of our overseas audience today, I would like to talk a little bit about the north of England. It accounts for 330 billion GDP and export over 90 billion worth of goods and services every year. It includes the great cities of Leeds, Liverpool, Manchester, Newcastle, and Sheffield, and has strong freight, logistic, and transport links, including 12 international ports and 7 airports. The region has a long and rich history of innovation and entrepreneurship. Indeed, it has a high-skilled workforce in fields such as engineering, advanced manufacturing, chemicals, materials, science and technology, and so on. It also offers access to world-leading technology and research centers. The Northern Powerhouse is one of the fastest growing areas in Europe for tech innovation with outstanding capabilities in high performance computing, artificial intelligence, immersive technology, fintech, edtech, and e-commerce. Among the world-class tech hubs across the north are Digital City in the Middlesbrough Tees Valley, Media City UK in Salford, Greater Manchester, Science Tech Daresbury in Cheshire, and the Science Central Helix in Newcastle upon Tyne. I would like to thank British Malaysia Chamber of Commerce for hosting today's recruitment seminar for the Northern Powerhouse Virtual Technician to Malaysia with the support of DIT Malaysia. And also delighted to welcome the speakers, Ryan Chan, Dr. Chris Hemingway, Ms. Sim Kwak Gek, and Eugene Chow. For the past couple of years, we have successfully organized trade missions to ASEAN, including a physical visit to Thailand and Indonesia in October, November 2019, 2 virtual tech missions to Indonesia in August and October last year, and in March this year, we ran a virtual trade mission to Singapore. And now, I'm delighted to announce this exciting virtual tech mission to Malaysia planned for 5th July. For this virtual mission, we are working in partnership with our delivery partner, Phoebe Nones, and team at the British Malaysia Chamber of Commerce with the support of DIT Malaysia, Deborah Clark, Clifford Babb, and Kelvin Wu, of course. Now, who are we looking for this fantastic trade mission? Well, if you are an innovative and experienced exporters and in tech, digital or associated services, and if you are located in the UK Northern regions, meaning the Northwest, Yorkshire and Humber, and the Northeast, you are invited to register your interest today. We have only 15 places, not 5, 15 places available. Participation is by selection. So in other words, we'll be talking to your local DIT international trade advisors, colleagues at DIT Malaysia, and also BMCC on selection suitability. So what do you get if you are selected for this mission for your £50 plus VAT? It is actually a 1,200 package of activities which we cover from DIT Northwest. It will help you to raise your profile of your company, your product and services in a new exciting market. Will support your market entry and also generate interest and understanding of your offering. And it's also, of course, increase your understanding of the market and the demand in Malaysia. You will receive ongoing support before and throughout the mission and after. Not only that, you will also gain access to key industry professionals like some of the speakers today. Once you are selected, you will have a one-to-one consultation with Kelvin Wu and also Phoebe to understand more about your products and services and to match with the demand. We'll organize a pre-mission briefing and also we'll have an effective screen pitching session on the 17th of July. And once that is done, we will have a one-to-one bespoke matching program, individual for you, starting on the mission day, which is the 5th of July, and finishing hopefully by 19 July. And after that, we'd like to have a catch-up session with you to exchange best practice. So for your next step, register your interest. This is the link. And if you want a copy of the Malaysian mission application, do write to events@tradenorthwest.org. Do remember the application closing date is 21st May and 15 places only available by selection. Here is my contact. And also if you're writing about today's session and how exciting it is and the opportunities and your interest in the trade mission, if you are located in UK Northern Powerhouse, please do hashtag us, and also below is our Twitter handle. If you have any questions, do ask now. I'm happy to answer them before I hand over to Phoebe. Thank you.
Thank you, Philomena. That was very useful. We have one question in the chat box, but I think it looks like it's directed more to MDEC, so we will ask that later after their session. So now I will move on to my presentation, an overview of Malaysia and also how BMCC can support you in the market. So Malaysia is divided into East Malaysia and West Malaysia, or Peninsular Malaysia. For the peninsula, we're bordering Singapore in the south and Thailand in the north. For East Malaysia, which is Borneo Island, we border Indonesia and Brunei. The capital, Kuala Lumpur, or KL, is located in West Malaysia, which is where the chamber is. Our population is 32 million. Now, the World Bank has ranked Malaysia number 12 for ease of doing business. The government has also placed a strong focus on digital infrastructure and transformation by launching My Digital, which is Malaysia's digital economy blueprint, earlier this year. So we'll hear more on this from the other speakers today. Malaysia is your gateway to ASEAN and UK's second largest trading partner in ASEAN. Next slide, please. So Malaysia has a very long-standing relationship with the UK. We're part of the Commonwealth. We have well-established financial, legal, and education systems. Standard Chartered and HSBC have been here for over 100 years. There are currently 5 UK universities with campuses in Malaysia: the University of Nottingham, Heriot-Watt, Newcastle, Reading, and Southampton. And the government is also very supportive and provides incentives. The national language is Bahasa Malaysia, or Malay, and English is widely spoken as it is taught as a second language in school. It's also the business language. So most people are either bilingual or multilingual, with the addition of either Mandarin, Cantonese, and other languages. So we have an educated workforce, also vibrant business environment, and definitely a well-developed infrastructure. So Malaysia is open for business. During the pandemic, the Malaysian Investment Development Authority, or MIDA, as they are known, they are the government's principal agency for investment. And MIDA has launched the Business Traveler Center, or BTC, to ease the mobility for business travelers during the pandemic. So if you are a business traveler entering Malaysia for less than 14 days, you do not need to quarantine, and you can get a swab test with results within 3 hours. The website is listed on my slide. It's safetravel.mida.gov.my. So as you can see, there are quite a range of UK companies who have set up in Malaysia. We have financial institutions, healthcare companies, manufacturing, retail, education. One of the newest UK companies being Smith & Nephew, which has set up a high-tech manufacturing facility in Penang, located in the north. So a little bit about the Chamber and how we can support UK companies. The BMCC was established in 1963. We have 4 key pillars: networking and events. Businesses join for our events and to tap into our extensive network. We also offer branding and exposure through our multiple platforms. Government advocacy, which we have through our sector committees. We have an energy committee and 2 separate education committees, as our education members account for a very large segment of our membership. And finally, trade services, where I sit. So under trade services, which is our offering for UK companies, we are the overseas delivery partner for DIT UK, supporting the exports of goods and services into Malaysia. Our support is based on your needs and can come in many forms. It can come through bespoke events for targeted stakeholders, B2B matching, reports, trade missions, roadshows, or exhibitions. And of course, we would also welcome you to join us as a member. The BMCC is also part of the BISIA network, that is the Britain and Southeast Asia network of 10 British chambers. And we are also part of the British Chambers of Commerce, or BCC Global Chamber Network. So we're definitely able to connect you accordingly. I hope this has given you a slightly better understanding of Malaysia. Here are our contact details. Please feel free to get in touch and let us know how we can assist. I am happy to take questions now. Okay, I have a question here from Brian. It's a question, I believe this would be more for Philomena. He's asking, what would be the target audience of the question be? Philomena, do you want to take this one?
Can you repeat that,
Sure.
Phoebe?
Sure. He's asking, Brian is asking, what would be the target audience of the mission be?
Okay. The target audience will be those who are in the tech sector, digital, and in products and services. So what I mean by associated services would be all those who are related in tech. So for example, smart cities, we have ad tech, we have got financial services, and I think the key would be very much, if that is of interest to you, put in your application form, and we'll discuss that with Phoebe, Calvin, and the team to look at whether there's very clear opportunities, and we will come back to you. But primarily, we are focused on tech-related sectors. I hope that answers your question.
That's great. Thanks, Philomena. There is another question to put the application links in the chat. Okay, I will do that shortly. There is another question. It says, is there any questionnaire or channel for participants where they can share their objectives in Malaysia, target market, or market interests in other countries?
And
Is there
who's
anyone
the
who wants
question
to?
from?
That's from Dewi. Dewi,
Devi.
sorry. It's for Philomena, actually, I see it now.
Thank you. Thank you, Devi. Certainly, I think between DIT and also BMCC, we'll look at all the applicants. They will be mentioned about the other markets that they will be focusing on. And if they are interested, let's say in Malaysia, in Southeast Asia, in ASEAN, including Indonesia, we will discuss it with the companies to ensure that they are okay for us to discuss it with Davy, for example, and also colleagues at DIT in Indonesia to look at opportunities.
Thank you, Philomena. I see another question, but it's come through the chat. Could I kindly remind the attendees to put your questions in the Q&A box, because it's easier for us to keep track of it, because if it's in the chat, it might just get lost. But I'm gonna try and find it in the chat box. It says, can Scotland be included in the Northern Powerhouse?
Okay, Scotland, you've got the Scottish equivalent to DIT, so that they will cover that. So at the moment, the Northern Powerhouse covers the northwest of England, the northeast, Yorkshire and Humber.
Okay,
sorry,
perfect.
not Scotland.
Thanks.
At the moment.
Thanks, Philomena. Okay, another question here. When will applicants be notified of the selection, please? This is from Tim.
Okay, Tim, in terms of selection, I would suggest that you put in the application very quickly, because we have got only 15 places, and we would hope to notify those who are selected by the 25th of May, if not earlier. That would also depend on how fast Phoebe and Calvin assess together with us on suitability.
Thank you, Philomena. I think that's all the questions we have time for now. Next up, we're pleased to welcome Mr. Calvin Wu, Senior Trade Manager for Technology from DIT Malaysia. Calvin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Phoebe. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much again for taking the time to attend this particular session. And I must say it's a pleasure to have had the opportunity to work with my colleagues from DIT Northwest and to support the Northern Powerhouse Virtual Trade Mission. And for me, today, I would like to share a little bit about the UK-Malaysia technology partnership that we have formed that enabled us to be here in this session to have this particular conversation. Next slide, please. So Malaysia has been identified by the UK as one of the primary markets for the technology sector. And the reason being is, as what has been mentioned by Phoebe, because of the favorable business environment and also the business-friendly environment and also conducive environment for technology companies to thrive, and also a very strong government commitment in investing in the innovation landscape here in Malaysia. And that presents a lot of opportunities, not only for the local players, but the players from abroad as well. And DIT has been at the forefront to forge this partnership with the Malaysian tech ecosystem for UK companies to have that exchange between Malaysia and the UK. And the tech journey has been a very exciting one between the UK and Malaysia. And the whole inception started when DIT Malaysia signed an MOU with the Malaysian Digital Economy Corporation, MDEC, which was witnessed by our trade envoy, Richard Graham, the Prime Minister Trade Envoy in 2016. And this particular partnership with MDEC has opened up a plethora of opportunities for UK technology companies to form partnerships with local tech companies here in Malaysia. And we would like to thank the unwavering support of MDEC and also our colleagues at BMCC in making our journey a successful one. Next slide, please. Since the beginning of our journey, after the MOU signing, there are various initiatives to further facilitate the entry of UK companies into Malaysia. So there were various trade missions organized throughout the years. various visits by senior leaders from the UK into Malaysia, and also from Malaysia to the UK as well. And to date, we have successfully facilitated various collaboration and investments by UK tech company in Malaysia. And next slide, please. And with the commitment from UK coming into Malaysia, and Malaysia has also reciprocated their interest and continues to reaffirm the interest in working with UK tech companies. So I would like to share a little bit of how DIT Malaysia continue to support UK companies in Malaysia. So firstly, DIT in Malaysia, we provide in-country networking opportunity that is organized by DIT, which includes high-level meetings with local stakeholders and also UK representative in the region. And DIT Malaysia continuously provide this support to UK companies who are already present in Malaysia, and also to UK companies who wish to access the Malaysian market. Next slide, please. And DIT Malaysia continue to support UK company through various initiatives. And one of the initiatives has been mentioned by Philomena, is a trade mission, where it's a platform to support UK companies to form a partnership with key local stakeholders and to access the Malaysian market and to gain market insights from the local market expert from various industries within the technology sector. And secondly, the local DIT Malaysia team also provides in-country support, where the local team will provide support through introduction to local public and private stakeholders and also authorities in Malaysia. And thirdly, we also provide regional connectivity as well. So say, for example, if you wish to enter the adjacent market from Malaysia, DIT in Malaysia will be able to support you to connect with our DIT colleagues in the Asia Pacific region. So just to share with you some of the example, we have helped some of the companies like IdeaGen to launch in Malaysia, companies like TransferWise, and also DAM Smart Asia Center of Excellence in Malaysia. Despite the looming pandemic, we did not let the pandemic stop us from continuously engaging with our business community. The DIT Malaysia team continue to engage with with UK businesses through different webinars to foster the dialogue between UK and Malaysia technology exchanges. And recently we hosted a dialogue session with the Minister for Multimedia and Communication. And even very recently, I would say, allow me to say miraculously, we are able to celebrate one of the major milestones of a UK company called Clarivate, who is a 100 UK company to receive MSC status in Malaysia. To date, Malaysia is one of the 11 markets globally that is identified by the UK that offers the greatest scope for UK companies to invest in technology opportunities in Malaysia. And since inception, DIT has supported over 20 collaborations and investment by UK company in Malaysia, and the total value of trade was valued at £131 million worth of trade that has been facilitated through DIT itself. And on behalf of DIT Malaysia, we do look forward, to support you in your expansion journey to Malaysia and beyond. Next slide, please. And with that, I end my presentation. And if there's any form of inquiries, please feel free to drop me or my colleagues at BMCC a note, and we'll be more than happy to support you in your expansion journey here in Malaysia. Thank you. I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Kelvin. That was very insightful. Let's take some questions. Okay, I think I see one from Brian. I think it looks like Philomena's typing out the answer. Philomena, do you want to just answer it live?
I can.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Brian. You asked about whether there'll be pitching opportunities to NDEP and other local governments. What I would say to you is, assuming that you're applying for this mission to be considered, and in your objectives and who you're hoping to target should be listed there. And if you have known companies already, or the type of companies that you want to look at as part of the business-to-business program, do list that there. So just to draw back to what I mentioned earlier on, is a bespoke business matchmaking. It's not a general matchmaking where we have different companies and you do the pitching. No, it's not like that. It's bespoke to you. So I am happy to go offline later on and we can have a chat about that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Philomena. I do see another question. Okay, so we've answered Brian's question. I see another question from Peter. I think that's about starting up in KL, so it looks like it's more related for Deloitte, but we'll take that after their presentation. So next up, we are delighted to welcome Mr. Ryan Chan, Head of Global Business Development, Tech Ecosystem and Globalization from MDEC. Ryan, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Phoebe, and very good morning to everyone logging in from the UK, and a good afternoon to everyone else that's coming in from Malaysia and surrounding regions. Just give me a minute while I pull up my slides. So as Phoebe mentioned, my name is Ryan. I head up the business development unit within our division that's called Tech Ecosystem and Globalization. Essentially, our division looks at supporting and developing the local startup and scale-up ecosystem and globalizing our Malaysian companies. The organization I represent is called Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, MDEC, or as we like to call it, MDEC. We are a government agency set up by the government of Malaysia 25 years ago, exactly in 1996, to develop and support the growth of our digital economy. The reason for this is because back then our economy was very much a commodities-based economy, agricultural-based, and heavily into manufacturing. And to find the next engine of growth, the government wanted to transform the economy, and hence the focus on digital and a knowledge-based economy. Today, I think we've grown, and I will share with you some numbers and some information about the size and scale of this market, and also give you an overview of the ecosystem that we have, as well as touch on potential opportunities and sectors that may be of interest to you. So let me very quickly run through this. As you know, Malaysia is located in Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is essentially a regional block of about 10 countries. And today is one of the fastest growing economic regions in the world. Looking at statistics compiled by Google, we've seen that despite the pandemic last year in 2020, the internet economy continued to grow, albeit at a slower pace, 5%. However, last year, we added 40 million new users to the internet economy, which was a lot more users than the previous 5 years combined. So Google and the like, I'm very confident that Southeast Asia will continue to grow our digital economy, our internet economy, and to surpass $300 billion by 2025. Malaysia is also uniquely positioned. We like to believe that we are centrally located in this region, and given the level of development that we have in terms of infrastructure and connectivity, we are no more than 4 hours away by flight to any of the countries within Southeast Asia, and to East Asia, North Asia as well. And as you can see, we have a captive potential customer base of more than 600 million users in this region. A little bit about Malaysia, as Phoebe mentioned as well, in terms of ease of doing business, we are ranked 12 globally and only second in Southeast Asia. Other indexes that might be of interest would be in terms of talent competitiveness. We are the highest ranked upper middle income country in the world, and that overall we are ranked 26. When it comes to innovation, we are also very high up, second again in the upper middle income category. I think if I'm not mistaken, overall worldwide we are ranked 33 in terms of innovation. For companies that are looking to set up shared services or business process outsourcing in Malaysia, again, we are regularly top 3 in the world, just behind India and Philippines. And one thing to note was that when we were in lockdown last year, when countries all over the world was going into lockdown and sending workers back home, the fact that Malaysia had a very mature and well-developed internet connectivity infrastructure BPO and shared services companies were still able to operate in Malaysia despite having their workers working from home. So that I think is a testament to the level of development that we have achieved when it comes to infrastructure. Some other rankings that we've achieved in the past, we commissioned Startup Genome and we worked with them to do a study on our ecosystem. And Kuala Lumpur is now ranked 11 out of 100 emerging ecosystems in the world. And when we look at performance and talent, we are pretty high up as well. Performance of our startups in the ecosystem is top 10. And by ecosystem value, we're ranked number 3. There are aspirations that we want to grow this further. And to get Kuala Lumpur and Malaysia in general into the mainstream ecosystem ranking in the next few years. If you peruse the report from Startup Genome, they also highlight 2 areas which is of high interest to us. Number 1, fintech is a fast-growing sector, particularly in the area of Islamic fintech. So again, looking at indexes that track the ranking of countries when it comes to the Islamic economy, Malaysia ranks very high. In fact, I think we're ranked number 1 in most sectors for the Islamic economy, whether it's travel, lifestyle, finance, and so on and so forth. And in the area of Islamic fintech, I think that is huge potential for us to grow further, given the regulatory framework and the ready market for you to test this out. Games and animation is another sector of interest also for startups, because within Southeast Asia, we have actually grown to be one of the largest outsource centers for games development and animation services development as well. At the same time, we've also groomed a lot of local companies that have started to create their own IP and started to sell and license this IP to overseas markets. So another nascent area that we really want to capitalize on. An overview of the last 25 years, as you've seen, we started in 1996. We've attracted many multinationals to come and set up in Malaysia. To date, we've got close to 4,000 over companies given the special MSC status by MDEC, both local and foreign operating here in Malaysia. And at the same time, we've also groomed a lot of local companies and have groomed them and sent them to be regional or global champions. As of 2019, the total revenues generated by these companies within our database is well over $100 billion and created about 180,000 jobs. Moving beyond, we further want to grow this, and obviously, this is why we're engaging the likes of BMCC and so on to do this. And this is important to us because when we look at GDP contribution, digital economy actually contributes 19.1% to Malaysia's GDP. And of course, we have aspirations to grow this further to 22.6% in the next 5 years. And looking at the population, we have about 32 million in Malaysia, not a huge market in comparison to our neighbors in Indonesia, Thailand, or Philippines. But this population is highly urbanized. Over 77% of our population is in urban areas. And as you can see, 84% are already connected to the internet. Majority are using smartphones, and mobile phone penetration is exceedingly high as well. And everyone, almost everyone that's connected is already on social media and are very tech savvy users. So this, we believe, provides a perfect test bed for you to be able to roll out your solutions in a reasonably sized and well-sized market to test out your products and services and solutions before expanding into other countries in Southeast Asia. Some of the other things that we would like to highlight as well is, again, as some of the other speakers have pointed out, Malaysia is a multi-ethnic, multicultural, and multilingual country. And this is important because when you look at Southeast Asia, we're a loose group of 10 countries, each very unique from one another. And the fact that we Malaysians have grown up in such a multicultural background, that gives many of us the flexibility and adaptability to be able to assimilate and work with founders and entrepreneurs and consumers from other markets, to be able to understand them and to be able to adapt and change our approach. The very fact that we're multilingual is also something that stands out, being able to speak multiple languages, and that helps to access markets such as Indonesia as well, where there are similarities in the language. As I mentioned, we're very much focused on growing the innovation and technology sector of Malaysia. In fact, government is going on a massive drive to transform and automate our traditional sectors. So in terms of manufacturing, there's a big push right now from the government to encourage manufacturing companies to automate and digitalize their processes. And this is backed up by grants that's given out by the government to encourage this adoption among our SMEs and also large local enterprises. Some of these technologies could be in areas of automation, IoT, intelligent tools, intelligent processes, process automation, and so on. And also one area is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, interestingly enough, in Malaysia is again, a growing sector. Overall in Southeast Asia, I think we are the second largest market when it comes to cybersecurity and cybersecurity services. And this is important because as we see more and more SMEs and local enterprises adopting digital technology and digital solutions in their businesses, the exposure to cyber threat will then exponentially increase. So the need for cybersecurity is again exceedingly high, and we are also working with associations and government to roll out bite-sized cybersecurity solutions to the small and medium enterprises. Given that Malaysia is a fairly open market and we're well exposed to different technologies and different products from various markets, so the need for a company to come in to offer a unique selling point at an affordable price point is also very important. To be able to scale and to supply your technology is also important as well. And this is where partnerships is important, where I think it's important to be able to work with a local partner and to sell with and sell through a local partner to the local market. Being Asians, relationship plays a very important role. So it tends to take time to build up relationships with your potential customers and even your partners as well. So I think that's where I would encourage you to invest a little bit of time, invest a little bit of effort in terms of building this trust and building this relationship. Sales cycles tend to be a bit longer in comparison to most Western markets. I believe if you've been selling in the UK and European markets, you will find that sales cycles here tend to be slightly longer, as long as 6 to 9 months, if not more sometimes. And obviously, equip yourself with the relevant market knowledge within the sector. Reach out to DIT, BMCC for more of this kind of information. Do also reach out to us as well. So also some other opportunities that may be present here and you may be interested in as well is number one, e-commerce is also huge in Malaysia, more so given the current pandemic where adoption of e-commerce is high. So if you are in the e-commerce and e-commerce related sectors, I think this would be of interest to you as well. I believe when it comes to per capita spending on e-commerce, we are one of the highest in the region. And again, looking at consumer behavior and consumer patterns, Malaysians are very open to purchasing different unique products from all over the world. So if you have that kind of offering, I think that would be fantastic. If you have solutions that offer platforms for SMEs to be able to offer their products on the internet and to provide the supporting solutions and technologies along the whole value chain, that's fantastic as well. Other areas would be agri-tech and health tech, obviously. Agri-tech is also something that we see a lot of interest picking up. A lot of technologies, particularly IoT related technologies, are being rolled out to automate agricultural sector. And this is being paired up with AI and data analytics solutions as well. Likewise, for health tech, there's a whole suite of different companies coming up offering different solutions in health tech coupled with medical devices also. So as mentioned just now, given the importance of digital economy, the Malaysian government recently rolled out this digital economy blueprint that sets out a vision for the next 5 and 10 years. Interim targets for 2025 would be to grow the digital economy to 22.6% of the GDP, to further invest in digital infrastructure investments, such as ensuring that broadband coverage and broadband connectivity is expanded to rural areas, and to also implement 5G technologies in our telco sector. We want to be able to grow and attract unicorns into Malaysia. The target is to have 5 of these unicorns by 2030 and two of the unicorns by 2025. The other areas would be to digitalize government services, to be able to get government services to offer the services on the internet and to be digitalized, and at the same time to encourage new startups and new innovation-driven companies to be founded, and with this to spur creation of new jobs, up to 500,000 jobs by 2025. So again, a snapshot of what I've shared in terms of location, business-friendly environment, support ecosystem, and so on. One thing I also want to highlight is the incentives and support that's given by the government. We have what we call the MSC tax incentive, and that's given to qualified companies who meet criteria. You will be given up to a maximum of 10 years of tax exemption, and to be allowed to hire what we call foreign knowledge worker through a fast-track visa that's managed by MDEC. The other thing that's being offered to startups, smaller companies that may not qualify for this, would be what we call the Malaysia Tech Entrepreneur Program, or MTEP. So the MTEP is a work visa that's given to founders, co-founders, and senior management of the companies. And with this, you are able to get up to a 5-year visa to be working in Malaysia. And for this, we work together with Malaysia Digital Hubs. These are essentially accredited co-working spaces that we work together. Today, there is 21 of these Malaysia Digital Hubs all over Malaysia. And these are co-working spaces that we bring together content and programs to support the startup ecosystem. And these programs includes working with accelerators and incubators, and bringing in venture capital investors, angel investors, as well as mentors and coaches to help guide startups through their business journey. So just a little bit about MDEC, what we do. Number one, we look into providing programs to upskill and reskill Malaysians to get them ready for the digital economy. And that also includes going into universities to ensure that universities are providing syllabus and education to get Malaysians ready for the new economy. Secondly, to look into businesses and to ensure that they are digitally powered and digitally ready. So that's 2 prongs to it. The first prong would be looking at our local small, medium enterprises and our local enterprises, and working out programs and incentives for them to be digitally transformed and to convert their processes, and with this transformation to be able to create new revenue streams. And then secondly, to look into supporting our startup and scale-up ecosystem to ensure that we've got a steady supply and steady stream of local technology and local champions that we can then support in their expansion. And then thirdly, it's into attracting foreign direct investments in the sector of digital, primarily in areas such as data centers, animation, games, and so on. Again, just giving you a snapshot of the programs that we do and some of the focus sectors, as mentioned, IoT, big data, AI, and so on. So I just want to take this opportunity to showcase and highlight some of the success stories that we've been able to groom from Malaysia. Aerodyne is today the world's #2 drone service provider company. It is a 100% homegrown company from Malaysia, started less than 10 years ago, and today they're in 35 countries, providing their drone technology and their data technology into sectors such as oil and gas, agriculture, building maintenance, and so on and so forth. We've got Custom, who today is Southeast Asia's largest used car trading platform, transacting over $300 million on their platform, and are well on the way to become a potential unicorn. Fintech is again important to us, and we see companies such as Capbay and Softbase rolling out innovative fintech solutions. Softbase in particular has rolled out technologies and solutions that's now being used in countries such as Japan and Europe and the US. And again, they've got key investors from Japan as well supporting the expansion. So a snapshot of some success stories that we have. And then again, to reiterate the point, number one, we've got a strategic location for you to expand your business in Southeast Asia. We have very friendly policies and conducive business environment for you to operate in. Couple that with government support in terms of incentive and grants to support your expansion. Some of the things that we would like to offer as well, working with our digital hubs, we've been able to work out a discounted rate for any companies that is interested. And with these digital hubs are also services that they offer, such as support services, mentors, entrepreneurs, and connecting to investors and so on. All right, so that's my presentation. Happy to take questions later. That's my email. So if you want to drop me an email, feel free to do so and I will get in touch with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ryan. That was actually really useful. I think we only have time for one question. I think we'll take the question that came earlier from Mobin. What tech solutions are being used for smart cities and are large software like SAP and real estate together with complementary solutions being used in Malaysia?
Sure. Yeah, so Mobin is right. So from what we see in smart city deployment, smart city solution deployment, it's typically a integration of different technologies from different providers. I'm not sure whether SAP has rolled out anything here, but I do know that Alibaba, through Alibaba Cloud, has rolled out a smart city solution, primarily in the what do you call it, smart cameras monitoring for Kuala Lumpur. I believe IBM has also rolled out something for Penang, another of our cities, and that's typically done in collaboration with a lot of local providers, where they then integrate different solutions and different technologies into it. So it's typically a combination and not a siloed or standalone solution from one single vendor.
Thank you, Ryan. There's also another question from Peter, who's asking about starting up in KL, but I know we have run out of time. And he's also asking for the 5-year visa for entrepreneurs link. So maybe I can connect you with him after this event, Ryan,
sure, yeah.
And then you can take that forward. Thank you.
For sure, yeah. Thank you.
And next up, we're delighted to welcome Dr. Chris Hemingway, Director of Marks & Clark. Chris, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Phoebe. Let me just see if I can share my slides. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview of intellectual property in Malaysia. I think on the first slide, I've just kind of given an overview of why would you choose Malaysia to protect your stuff. I know some of the speakers have already touched on this. Two things I think that I think are quite interesting here. One is that it's got one of the most prolific number of shopping malls in the world, the 4th best shopping city in the world, only after just New York, Tokyo, and London. But Malaysia is not just ethnically diverse; it is also one of the most diverse biologically in the world. It's rated as a mega diverse country when you look at flora and fauna. I think it's got something like 10% of the entire world's number of species of plants and animals. And of course, that's of particular interest to me, because I'm a patent attorney, so I'm always looking at helping people to protect their inventions. So you can see there's quite a number of inventions that can come out of this biodiversity, and IP is what you would need then to try and protect that investment from other competitors. So when we look at the Malaysian legal system, it's actually quite similar to the UK. I mean, it originally it's common law. It was originally derived from the UK. There are some Australian influences as well, and Malaysia also provides some Islamic law. But when it comes to the intellectual property law, it's very, very closely related on the UK system. You'll see over it's a fused legal profession. In other words, like the US, the solicitor you see will also be the person that goes to court. It's not separate like you have barristers and solicitors in the UK. But IP agents, patent attorneys, patent agents are also separate like they are in the UK. So although the solicitor, the legal side, tends to be fused like the US, the IP agents are still separate. If you do run into problems with an intellectual property issue, you can actually get to the court quite quickly. I know it says 12 to 18 months. It might seem like a long time, but that's actually quite fast if you compare to other countries in the region where you could be waiting for several years. If you still want to, if you have an adverse decision, you can appeal it to the Court of Appeal, where there's 3 judges, and beyond that to the Federal Court, which is equivalent to the Supreme Court in the UK, if you need to go further. And there's no jury system, so it's the court system as well is also very similar for IP to the UK. So when we're talking about intellectual property, what we generally mean is these are the 4 main types. So patents are protecting concepts and inventions. You have trademarks for protecting essentially brands. Designs, industrial designs are sometimes called, will protect the appearance of articles, and copyright will protect literary, artistic, musical and dramatic works. And you can see on my old phone there what you can use those things for. So the patent covers a sliding mechanism, the way it works. The trademark is for Samsung, the branding. The design might protect the overall shape of the handphone, and the copyright for text in the manual. These things tend to overlap, so you can have multiple IP per invention. And if you look at the statistics for how Malaysia is doing overall, we have a dedicated intellectual property office called, MIPO we call it, and for patent examiners, they generally have a technical background. So, you know, if you're doing a biotech invention, you normally have an examiner who's looking at it, as you would expect, with a biotech type background. About 7,500 patent applications are filed every year. And when I ask Malaysians, where do you think that ranks in the world, they normally say, well, about halfway, but actually it's in the top 25 of the world. China is currently number 1. It's overtaken the US a few years ago, and the US is number 2. But Malaysia's not far, actually not that far down the list. That will seem to surprise people for some reason. I'm not sure why. And then when we look at trademarks, you get about 45,000 every year. We joined the Madrid Protocol just over a year ago, which allows you to submit international trademark applications, where you can designate Malaysia as part of that international application. About 1,800 registered designs, and we can also register copyright in Malaysia as well, which is unusual. Although copyright is one of the things that you get automatically, you don't have to register it. We have a voluntary registration system if you want to provide evidence at a later date. So this is roughly what has been happening over the last few years with those numbers. You can see just in the last year, in 2020, there's a bit of a dip across the board, presumably because of the whole coronavirus situation. But apart from that, things have generally been on the increase over the last few years. So there was a bit of a dip in patents a few years ago as well, because of, I think ostensibly because of budget cuts to the universities. But generally things have been increasing quite smoothly over time. Trademarks in particular have been, which is the blue dotted line there, the number of filings has increased by about, I think it's 8% every year, except for the last year. So it just shows that the amount of intellectual property over time is increasing quite steadily as Malaysia transitions from what we would call a manufacturing type economy to a more developed or innovation-based economy. So here's some examples of some trademarks. And when we're talking about trademarks, what we really mean is any sign capable of being represented graphically, capable of distinguishing goods or services of one undertaking, one company from those of another. In other words, brands. Usually they're words or logos. You can keep them going indefinitely, subject to renewal every 10 years once they've been registered. But they should be distinctive. So you can't have, for example, you can't start up a new burger bar and call it the Burger Bar. That would not be distinctive because it would be descriptive of the service. Generally as well, you shouldn't be offensive or deceptive in terms of the branding. And you can see here, you've got Nike. These are some examples of Malaysian brands, Malaysian trademarks from some other brands. And the most valuable brand on this list is probably Coca-Cola, about $100 billion. And Milkmaid, I think, is the oldest one on this list. It's been going, it's been kept registered since 1934. So what's that, more than 80 years old now. And the trademarks are really regulated by the Trademarks Act. We had a new act just over a year ago. Previously, you could only have one trademark in one class of goods. So for example, if you were protecting food, you'd have to register it in that particular class. If it was for clothing, it would be class 25. But now we can have one trademark covering multiple classes, which will help simplify things a bit. In addition, we now can file trademarks for non-traditional marks, so things like colors, sounds, smells, three-dimensional objects, animation. Now, I have to say, these are not entirely clear how we do those, and smell in particular is a bit of a difficult one. We're not entirely sure if you can, well, the law says you can register it. In practical terms, it's not entirely clear if actually it would be registrable. But things like colors, you can refer to Pantones. Sounds, you can put the musical notation. So there are methods of registering some of these non-traditional things in a graphical way. But how would you graphically represent a smell? It's not easy, because smell means something different to different people. The other interesting point is previously the trademark had a term of 10 years running from the priority date if it was claimed, whereas most countries run from the filing date irrespective of priority. Well, now the law has been harmonised so that new trademarks filed since 2019, since the Act came into force on the 27th of December, will also run from the filing date, irrespective of priority. So that's a bit more harmonised. And of course, we've got the Madrid Protocol so that you can now register an international trademark either via Malaysia, or you can designate Malaysia from somewhere else if you're filing from abroad. One issue we have had, though, is that the computer systems of the registry were replaced about 2 years ago, and it had quite a lot of issues since then. There are, because of the new acts, that kind of added some problems to it. So there are some issues that are still being ironed out. They will get there eventually, but it's just slowed things down a little bit in terms of the procedures and processes. Okay, so that's an overview of trademarks. Let's have a look at some patents. So when we're talking about patents, we're really talking about inventions. And an invention is patentable if it's new, involves an inventive step in and it's industrially applicable. An invention means an idea which solves a solution to a particular technological problem. So when we say new involvement in the inventive step, new means not publicly disclosed anywhere in the world before you file the application. So if there's a take-home message today that I want you to remember, it's don't publish your invention, don't disclose it to anyone outside of confidentiality agreement before you submit your patent application, because if you do, you probably won't be able to patent it anymore. Having said that, there is a grace period in Malaysia if you do it, if you disclose it yourself. So only 1 year, and I wouldn't rely on it necessarily because it doesn't necessarily help you in other countries. So if you file it in Malaysia, you've already got a disclosure and you can still file it in Malaysia. When you get to submit it in Europe, Europe will say, well, we can't help you anymore because you already disclosed it in Malaysia. We don't recognize the grace period law at the current time. So novelty is usually black or white. It's either been disclosed or it hasn't. Inventiveness is a bit more subjective. Is it obvious to a skilled person or not? And that's where the patent office will look at what's already out there, and they say, well, if you combine these documents together, you get the invention, therefore it lacks inventive step. Or there are no combinations out there where you lead to the invention, therefore your invention is patentable. The final one here is industrially applicable. This is generally straightforward to prove. It just means it's being used in any industry. So as long as, most of the time, as long as you don't break the laws of physics, like you're trying to create a perpetual motion machine or something, your invention will almost certainly tick that box. The final thing to mention here is that there are certain things which are not patentable. They're excluded from patentability. Software, business methods, presentation of information, methods of treatment on the human or animal body. So it's things like, you don't want a lawyer suing a doctor for suddenly conducting a surgery or something like that. So there are usually reasons behind these things. But they are only excluded to the extent that it relates to that thing as such. So even though you have software, the program itself might be excluded, but the implementation that the software create might still be patentable. It could be controlling something in a patentable way. So there may sometimes be ways around these exclusions. The Malaysian Patent Act came into force in 1986, and it was based on the old UK Act. And what's interesting is that we provide for something called utility innovations. We might also have a new act next year as well, but I've been saying that for a few years now. I'm still waiting, so there's no guarantee on that one. But let's talk a little bit about some of the idiosyncrasies of Malaysian patents, because there are some differences which are well worth knowing about before you get too far into it. The first thing to mention is that if you live in Malaysia, if you're a resident here or your company is based here, so ticks the box for being resident here as well, you must file it in Malaysia first if you're filing a patent application, which is what most people do, of course, because they live here. But sometimes what happens is you have a UK company with a Malaysian subsidiary, maybe HQ in the UK wants to file it first, in which case you've got to get a foreign filing license from the patent office, because if you don't, you could go to jail or you could get a big fine. And there's no real way of fixing that, although having said that, I don't know of anyone where action has actually been taken against someone. But it's one of those things that you've got to be a bit careful about. The next point there is if you're filing a national phase from a PCT is the International Patent Application, and Malaysia's been a member of that for many years, for I think 15 years now. The deadline is 30 months, which is one of the shorter ones. But if you accidentally miss the deadline, you can still get it back up to 12 months late by paying the additional fine. If you are filing a national phase from a foreign-based application in a different language, one thing to bear in mind is it's got to be in English when you submit the application. Most countries allow you to submit a translation later, but Malaysia doesn't. It must be in English. You can make amendments as well when you submit your application in Malaysia from an international application if you want to. And there are various ways of speeding it up as well. So if you need to get your patent through to grant quickly, we can use this thing called PPH, the Patent Prosecution Highway aspect, which is like a local equivalent, or even just pay the extra fees to put it on the fast track. We can even base the grant of the patent on a foreign granted patent in one of those 6 countries that are listed there. 2 more things. One is renewals are due annually on the day before the anniversary of grant. In most countries, it's the anniversary itself, so there's a little track there. And the other thing, of course, is based on grant, not the filing date. That's the other thing that's a bit different to the UK. But the final thing I just want to mention here is utility innovations, which are very powerful. In most countries, utility models, of which utility innovation is a type, are seen as secondary rights. You only require novelty, they're not examined, they just go straight through to grant without any substantive examination. And they might only last for 10 years. So effectively, you get a piece of paper, you don't really know if it's any good or not. But in Malaysia, the utility model is fully examined, you get it up to 20 years, but you still only require novelty. That means you can get something that's like a patent, but you don't need to tick the additional box for inventive steps. So it should be easier to get through. And potentially that makes it stronger than a patent, which is a bit unusual. I don't know any other country in the world that has something like this. Traditionally, they're used as a backup. So if you run into problems with your main patent application, you can, and the examiner says novel but not inventive, you can convert it to a UI in order to get it granted. But actually, there's a bit more to it than that you can actually go to a UI from the outset if you wanted to. So with that, I think I'm out of time. I'll just leave you my contact details if anyone has any further questions, and I'll pass it back to Phoebe.
Thank you, Chris. That was actually very interesting, and I hope the attendees have some questions for us. So let's take a look. Oh, we actually don't have any questions. Okay, so so that's fine. So you've been really thorough. So obviously they don't have any questions. So we move on to our next 2 speakers. We're pleased to welcome 2 speakers from Deloitte, Ms. Sim Kwangge, Managing Director of Deloitte Tax Services, and Mr. Eugene Chow, Director of Tax for Deloitte Malaysia. The floor is yours.
Okay, yeah. Good afternoon, everyone, to all in the UK. Good afternoon to those in Malaysia. Yeah, and good morning to everyone else in the UK. So for Deloitte, we have 2 speakers. So I will be covering a general overview of Malaysian taxation system for companies that are operating in Malaysia. So these are not just specific for companies in the tech sector, but or generally for all other companies that are operating in Malaysia, while Eugene will be covering company incorporation, company setting up requirements in Malaysia. And I hope with that, it can answer the question raised by Peter just now. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, let's get started. So this screen shows you the type of taxes in Malaysia. So the first one, corporate income tax. The general one is 24%. You see there 17%. 17% is applicable for small and medium enterprises, SME for short. And the 17% is applicable on the first 600,000 of chargeable income. And after that, the remaining is then subject to 24%. So what does it mean by SME? There are 3 criteria to fulfill. Number one, the paid up capital of the SME has got to be 2.5 million ringgit and below. And secondly is that the annual gross business income of the SME cannot be more than 50 million ringgit per year. And the third one relates to shareholding relationship. So that this SME, in terms of shareholding relationship with its companies in the group, it cannot be more than 50% related to any related companies in the group that has got more than 2.5 million paid up capital. So basically it's trying to say that if you have 2.5 million paid up capital, the rest in the group must also have the same paid up capital of less than 2.5 million. Then you can enjoy the 70% tax rate. Now moving on to the next one, which is withholding taxes. So withholding taxes applies on payments made by Malaysian tax resident companies to non-residents. So for example, a payment made by a Malaysian local company to someone in the UK, for example. And these are the types of payments that are subject to withholding taxes in Malaysia. So with dividend, we do not have dividend withholding tax. Now, when it comes to interest, it is 15%, royalty is 10%, for services that are rendered in Malaysia, 10%, rent for movable property and other income is also 10%. So the rates that you see here, these are the rates based on our local income tax legislation. The withholding tax rates can be further reduced based on a double tax agreement that Malaysia has with that particular country. So for example, let's say based on the double tax agreement that Malaysia has with the UK, then when Malaysia pays, let's say, royalty to a UK tax resident company, instead of 10%, it can be reduced to 8%, right? Moving on to stamp duty, when it comes to transfer of properties, it is 1 to 4%. When it comes to transfer of shares, then it is 0.3% of the value of the shares, and the value is determined by the higher of the net tangible assets of the company or the consideration paid for the purchase of the shares, whichever is higher. Okay. The next one is sales tax and service tax. So this is like an indirect tax, and the rate here is 10% for sales tax, which is applicable for manufacturing of certain goods in Malaysia, as well as importation of certain goods into Malaysia. Service tax is 6%, which is applicable on provision of certain taxable services in Malaysia. So typically, let's say companies that are providing IT services. So generally, these companies are required to register for service tax and charge 6% to their customers. Okay. Import duties, it ranges from 0 to 50%. Excise duties, it varies, and it's applicable to importation as well as manufacturing of certain goods, for example, tobacco products, motor vehicles, as well as alcohol products. We do not have capital gains tax in Malaysia, but we do have a real property gains tax, RPGT for short, which I will share in the next slide. and we do not have branch remittance tax. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a real property gains tax. So this is not a full-fledged capital gains tax, but it's a real property gains tax that is applicable on disposal of real property as well as shares in real property company. So real property would cover things like land and buildings, right? And shares in real property company. Now the meaning of real property company, RPC, means a company that owns real property or shares in RPC and the value of which is more than 75% of its total tangible asset. So in other words, in short, it's like a land-rich company. So when you sell the shares of that RPC, the disposal of it, the gain arising from it, is subject to RPGT. And here you can see the rates applicable. So what it means here is that the longer you hold the asset, then the rates will come down. Yeah. So if you have been holding it for, let's say, within 3 years, you sell it within 3 years. For a company where the seller is a company incorporated in Malaysia, the rate is 30%. But if you have been holding it for more than 5 years, the rate can be reduced to 10%. Okay. For non-citizens, non-permanent residents, and companies that are not incorporated in Malaysia, then when they sell the assets, then the rates is at its highest, which is 30%, and it's reduced to 10% only after 5 years. Okay, this is a general tax regime in Malaysia. So basis of taxation, we are on a territorial basis. So I think it's similar to the UK tax system, where we tax income that is accruing in or derived from Malaysia, except for companies that are in the banking, insurance, or air and sea transport business. Then these categories of business, they are taxed on a worldwide basis, right? How do you determine whether a company is tax resident in Malaysia or not? We look at where the management and control of this company is exercised. So if it's exercised in Malaysia, then it's considered as a tax resident in Malaysia. What does it mean by management and control? So we look at least having one board meeting in Malaysia. Okay, now in terms of tax losses, how do we treat the tax losses that is arising from the business? So when it comes to current year tax losses, that can be offset against any other sources of income. But when the losses cannot be utilized fully, then the balance can be carried forward. And in Malaysia, we have a 7-year restriction in terms of carrying forward tax losses, except when there is a substantial change in the shareholding of a dormant company. So if you are a dormant company in Malaysia and you have tax losses and there is more than 50% change in the shareholding of that dormant company, then the losses will be foregone. Yeah, the 7 years will not apply to you. Now, next is capital allowance, which is commonly called as tax depreciation as well. Capital allowance that can be utilized against income from the same business source. Okay, so let's say for a company that has got manufacturing source of income as well as, let's say, trading business as well, then the capital allowance arising from the manufacturing business can only be offset against the income from the manufacturing business, right? In terms of carrying forward the unabsorbed capital allowance, the principle is similar to what I've said just now for tax losses. Next slide, please. Filing due date means when does a company files your tax return in Malaysia? So it is within 7 months after the end of the accounting period. So meaning that if a company has got a December financial year end, you need to file by July the following year. Okay. Tax payments, I think this is quite similar to the UK. We have estimated tax. So you pay as you earn, yeah, and you pay in 12 monthly installments. starting from the second month in that basis period. So if you have a December financial year end, your first tax installment will start in February. Transfer pricing, we do have, Malaysia have a very robust transfer pricing rules. And with that, we also have some restriction in terms of tax deduction on financing costs or interest expense that you incur on related party loans. I'm not going to be very technical here. We have, Malaysia has this rule called the earning stripping rules, which basically restricts interest deductions based on we call it a tax EBITDA. So it's limited to 20% of the tax EBITDA when it comes to interest expense that you incur on related party loans. Okay, the last one here is limitations on assessments. Now, Malaysia has already been having self-assessment system since year 2000. UK has the same system as well. What it means that when you file your tax returns, that return is basically a deemed assessment, all right? Then you might be asking, so how long does the tax authorities have the right to come and check my books? Yeah, so in Malaysia it is 5 years, and it can be extended to 7 years if it is that the matter is in connection with transfer pricing. But if the authorities feels that there is negligence involved, there is a fraud or willful default, then there is no limitation at all. It's indefinite actually. So it's a bit different from the UK. I believe the UK, instead of 5 years, you have 4 years. All right, so this I just want to share with you the corporate income tax rate, the dividend withholding tax rate, VAT rates across the countries in Southeast Asia. There are 6 countries here that I'm going to share with you. So the green bar here shows the corporate income tax rate for countries in Southeast Asia. And you can see the red line. Red line is the average corporate income tax rate in ASEAN, which is 23%. And this is picked up from OECD. So Malaysia is at 24, Singapore is at 17, Philippines is at 30, Vietnam 20, Thailand 20, and Indonesia is at around 22. Yeah, so that is the corporate income tax rate. The blue bar is the effective tax rate from the shareholder perspective. Yeah, after taking into account dividend withholding tax. Yeah, because as a shareholder, what you get is dividend, right? So the profits is subject to tax, as well as when the dividend that you get as a shareholder, that can be subject to withholding tax depending on where you are. So like I said here just now, Malaysia, we do not have dividend withholding tax. Similarly applies for Singapore and Vietnam as well. They do not have dividend withholding tax rate. Philippines, there is 15%. And then Thailand is 10, Indonesia is 20. So if you combine the dividend withholding tax with the corporate income tax, you will get effective tax rate, which is the blue bar here. So Malaysia stays at 24, Singapore stays at 17, Vietnam will stay at 20, but when it comes to Philippines, it will go up, yeah, because of the dividend withholding tax rate. So for Philippines, effective tax rate will go up to 41, Thailand will go up to 28, and Indonesia, it will go up to 38. So if you look at this rate, I think Malaysia, we are quite there. I guess we are number 3 after Singapore and Vietnam. VAT rate, Malaysia, we do not have VAT. So Malaysia started switch to GST, goods and services tax, which is similar to VAT on 1st April 2015, but then it was then replaced with sales and service tax on 1st September 2018, and currently it is at 6%. Singapore has GST, which is at 7%. Philippines has VAT at 12%. Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia is at 10% VAT rate. So I hope this will give you an overview of the tax rates, applicable tax rates for countries in Southeast Asia. All right. So this is again, this is a comparison in terms of carrying forward of tax losses for Malaysia, just now I mentioned is 7 years. Singapore does not have any limit at all. Then Philippines has got a 3 years limit for you to carry forward your tax losses. And then Vietnam, Thailand, and Indonesia, they all have 5 years. Okay, capital gains tax, Singapore does not have capital gains tax. Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, and Indonesia have capital gains tax. Malaysia, the color is slightly different, as you can see on the screen, is because it is not a full-fledged capital gains tax, but it's only applicable for certain assets, and it's called real property gains tax, as I've explained just now. Okay, this is my last slide. This is a very common question that people ask when they want to set up their business in Malaysia. They will ask, should I set up a local a subsidiary, meaning a locally incorporated company in Malaysia, or just a branch? A branch would just be an extension of the headquarters. The key difference I want to highlight here is on withholding taxes. Okay, when it comes to a subsidiary, the subsidiary would usually be regarded as a tax resident in Malaysia simply because you would have your board of directors meeting at least once in Malaysia. So with that, when your customers pay to you, any of your Malaysian customers that pays to you for services, for purchase of products, for services, then there is no withholding tax at all. But when it comes to a branch would be regarded as a non-resident for Malaysian tax purposes. Then, when, let's say, the branch has got a contract to provide, let's say, IT implementation project for a local Malaysian customer, then when that Malaysian customer pays to the branch, there is a 13% withholding tax applicable. And it is broken up into 10 and 3%. The 10% is to cover the corporate income tax of the branch. So when the branch finally submits its tax return and pays its final tax payable, then this 10% can be offsetted against the tax of the final tax of the branch. And if there's any excess, it can be refunded to the branch. The 3% there is to cover the personal income taxes of the expatriates that are working in the branch. And it will be refunded to the branch when the expatriate employees fully settle their personal income tax obligations in Malaysia. So it's a bit more cumbersome because there will be an upfront deduction of withholding tax by your Malaysian customers. The other key difference would be tax incentive, which is usually granted to a company rather than a branch in Malaysia. So this is my last slide. Moving on to the next slide would be on company setup, which will be covered by Eugene. Next slide, please. Over to you, Eugene.
Right, thank you, Kwang Git. So this is a summary of how companies can be incorporated in Malaysia and what the requirements are as far as directorships are concerned, and we cover the different types of companies in Malaysia. Next slide, please. So the agenda will be company types, the features, the requirements for incorporation, the procedures, the fee and cost for registration, and also we'll cover one last slide, which is the comparison of the current Companies Act versus the previous one, and how much, what the main changes are and how it has made doing businesses easier in Malaysia. Next, please. Right, so we would have basically three different types of companies: those limited by shares, limited by guarantee, and those with no limit. The limit here refers to the liability of its members. Companies limited by shares are limited by the amount of shares held by the members, that is the investment. By guarantee would be the undertaking of the members that they have to contribute in the event of winding up. Unlimited, there will be basically no limit on the members at all. And the companies can be broken down into two broad categories, which is private companies, whereby it has not more than 50 shareholders, and a public company, which is any company other than a private company. So the main differentiation would be the number of shareholders. Next, please. Now, the features of a company are, firstly, it has to have a name, one or more members, one or more shares, in the case of company limited by shares, and one or more directors. The availability of the company name is essentially restricted to whether it's acceptable by the registrar of companies, whether it shares any similarity to an existing company, and whether it's deemed desirable or not. Basically here, the intention is so that the company's name is not offensive to anyone, and it does not share too much of a similarity to an existing company so as to give an impression that it's part of that group. Yeah. Now, the name of a public company ends with the word Berhad or the abbreviation BHD, which basically means limited. The private company ends with Sendirian Berhad, which means private limited, or the abbreviation SDN BHD. And the name of an unlimited company ends with Sendirian, or the abbreviation SDN. In the case of a number of members, for a private company, the minimum number of shares and member is 1. The minimum number of directors for is 1 for a private company and 2 for a public company. Next, please. Now, what are the requirements for incorporation? Firstly, there must be a promoter. The promoter will be the person who intends to set up the company. It can be a third party or it could be the shareholder and director, all right? Normally individuals or a holding company. You need to have at least 2 directors for a public company and at least 1 director for a private company. And as far as the directors are concerned, the director has to be, at least one of them has to be someone who ordinarily resides in Malaysia, by having a principal place of residence in Malaysia, right? So basically, there is no requirement for citizenship, just residency. Next, please. Now, what are the incorporation procedures? First, you need your name approved by the Companies Commission of Malaysia. Normally, we would submit in the intended name, and the Companies Commission of Malaysia responds quite quickly, to be honest, normally within a week or so. All right, and there are 2 ways one can make an application. Firstly, it is through a direct incorporation, whereby we reserve the name and we get the incorporation process starting immediately. The second one would be to make a reservation of the name and then submitting the incorporation application within 30 days. And of course, you can extend this. It's subject to a maximum of 180 days, and you just have to pay a minimal fee of, I think, 30 ringgit for every extension. The general information required for incorporation would include the proposed company name, the company type and status, the proposed business, the registered office, the business address, details of the director or promoter, declaration by the directors, declaration of compliance from the individuals responsible for the incorporation, and other supporting documents. Now, registered office and business address here is a little bit different. The business address is where you carry on your business. The registered office address is where we maintain the statutory documents, such as the register of members, the register of directors, and so on and whatnot. Now, this declaration by the directors is essentially a declaration that you are not a bankrupt, you are not a convict. Yeah, and the declaration of compliance would be a confirmation that whatever requirements of the Companies Act are, you've complied with it in making your application for incorporation. Any other supporting documents normally refer to cases where if you have a holding company in, let's say, the UK or in Malaysia, and you want to use that name. So the Companies Commission is very concerned about people misusing names. So you need to have a letter of approval from that company allowing you to use your name. So that would be an example of other supporting documents. Next, please. Right. So what's the registration fee? It's really affordable, yeah, to register a company in Malaysia. For a company limited by shares, the registration fee is 1,000 ringgit, and a company limited by guarantee, that's about 3,000 ringgit. Yeah. So very affordable to do so. Next, please. Now, this is my final slide. This basically compares the previous act and the current act and the changes that have been made, so that it makes it easier for businesses to operate. So what's the first one? Now, you're able to have a single director and single shareholder. Previously, you needed to have 2 of each. For a private company, there is no need to hold an annual general meeting. And if you have a members' written resolution, you no longer need to be unanimous. All right, majority of members voting for it or signing off on it would be sufficient. There is no need to have a memorandum of articles of association. That's an optional decision for the company right now. There's increased corporate governance. Essentially, the sanctions for non-compliance has gone up, and also there are solvency test requirements. So in the past, the Act was somewhat unclear as to what dividends can be, when dividends can be issued, whether it's current year profits or it has to be retained earnings. Essentially, right now, it says that as long as you are solvent and you meet the solvency test requirements, you can do so, right? There's no par value regime, share premium accounts are no longer relevant, and injection of funds will be based on the value and its effect on the shareholding structure is minimal. What this means is that in the past, we had some par value whereby for every share you issue, it had to have a par value of maybe 1 ringgit or 50 cents or whatever the amount that the company decides to be. So this creates a little bit of problems when you need to inject in additional shareholders, and they may not have the funds to join in because they are contributing something perhaps which is intangible. So right now with the no par value regime, the value versus the shareholding are 2 separate considerations altogether. Of course, they've introduced 2 corporate rescue mechanisms known as the corporate voluntary arrangements and judicial management. Basically, these are rescue schemes whereby, as the name implies, one is done voluntarily by the company, and the second one is through the management by the courts, right? And most importantly is that a lot of filing and reporting that we do now is online, like I mentioned just now, including the incorporation of the company. The Malaysian Business Reporting System, or MBRS, allows for the submission of annual returns, financial statements, and exemption applications all to be done online. And this has really helped us during this period where there's restriction on traveling and social distancing. So that has been really important and allowed for businesses to operate as much as possible. Yeah, I think that would be my last slide. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. Thank you, Phoebe.
Thank you, Eugene and Kwang Gek. That was actually very useful. We have one question here from Jennifer. It's a common question from UK companies or SMEs. Can a foreigner set up a company in Malaysia, or must they have a local or Malaysian shareholder?
No, they don't. There is no restriction on the shareholding unless you participate in certain strategic industries where that particular licensing requirements requires a local shareholder. But generally speaking, if you were to incorporate a company, there are no restrictions as far as shareholdings are concerned. And as for directors, there is no need at all to have a local, a Malaysian as a director, as long as that one director has got its, declares that his or her principal place of residence is in Malaysia.
Great, thank you very much. And a final question before we end for today. Is the cryptocurrency taxable in Malaysia?
Oh, okay. Cryptocurrency, okay, that's a very interesting question. I think that the short answer, I would say yes. Yeah, in Malaysia, we do not have a definitive guidelines on how cryptocurrency is taxed, but based on the general principles of taxation, of which the Inland Revenue Board of Malaysia, they have also came out to say that the gains arising from trading of cryptocurrency is subject to Malaysian income tax on the basis that the income is accruing in or derived from Malaysia. right? The question now is whether can you argue that this is a foreign source income and therefore not taxable in Malaysia? It can be challenged, I would say, can be challenged by the tax authorities in Malaysia. How do you prove that this is a foreign source? This is, carried out totally, entirely outside of Malaysia. So I think can be subject to challenge by the authorities in Malaysia. So short answer, I would say yes, Phoebe.
All right, thank you, Kwangik. That was very good answer. And I'm afraid that brings us to the end of our webinar. We've gone over a little bit of time, but thank you very much to all our esteemed speakers for your time, for sharing your valuable expertise, and also for the very insightful presentations today. Thank you to all our attendees for joining us today and for bearing with us the extra time and for sending in questions. We've covered all the questions, and of course, please feel free to reach out to us after the webinar as well. Thank you also to the BMCC team who have assisted behind the scenes to make this happen. We hope you'll join us again for our upcoming events. The next webinar is on 28 May. The topic is COVID-19 vaccination, a timely talk to address your concerns and expectations. This event is complimentary for BMCC members. Further information can be found on our events page and on our website, www.bmcc.org.my, or through our weekly e-newsletter, which we encourage you to sign up for. Once again, thank you for attending. Take care, stay safe and healthy.